Karen demands a VIP table, claiming to know the owner, but I'm the owner. And she ended up crying with a $4,000 bill after my revenge. Karen storms into the restaurant screaming that she knows the owner and that we must give her and her group of friends the VIP table reserved for celebrities. The problem is I am the owner and I have no idea who this lady is, but I decided to play along and see what happened. During the dinner, one of the girls asked me whether I thought my life was meaningless because I worked as a waiter. That's when I realized all bets were off and I was going to exact my retribution. This is what I did. This occurred around Christmas and New Year's. My grandparents immigrated to Canada from Italy in the 1970s and established a restaurant. When they died, my parents took over the restaurant, which they grew and expanded throughout the decades. I've been working at the restaurant since I was 15. As my parents grew older, they retired and became snowbirds, spending the winters in Florida. They sold the restaurant to me a few years ago, but they kept a small percentage of the stock as extra income in addition to their savings. As soon as I took possession, I modernized the old place. I rebuilt the restaurant, changed the logo, and contacted local and national newspapers to place advertisements. I invited food critics, bloggers, and vloggers. It was slow at first, and I began to fear that the loan I took out for all of this was the worst mistake I had ever made, that I had ruined 3 generations of a family business. But soon it began to work. A local semi-famous YouTuber included us in one of his videos, which prompted more people to visit and review us. Even on a Monday, we were seeing 5 to 10 times our regular volume. We became a destination for large events, and it wasn't uncommon for a celebrity to stop by on certain evenings. I even invited certain high-profile clients to visit and cook for our guests. This cost a fortune, so we were fully booked for the holidays. People had to make reservations in July to get a table in December. It took years to get to this point. When things get busy, I don't just sit in the back office. I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done. Greeting customers, bussing tables, or mopping the floors. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I wear a jacket and take charge. One night, 6 women walked in. 5 of them appeared to be in their early 20s, with the leader looking to be in her mid-20s. My best guess was that she was an older sister of one of the girls or an older sorority sister to incoming college students. I was greeting them at the entrance, and as they approached, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens how fantastic the restaurant was, how delicious the cuisine was, and how there might even be celebrities there. When she reached me, she explained that she needed a table for 6. I responded, "Of course, can I get the name on the reservation?" She stared at me and said, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He said he always keeps 1 or 2 tables open for special guests, and we can have one of those tonight." This is true for many high-profile restaurants, and I've been doing it recently as well. But I had no idea who this woman was, and she had never discussed any of this with me. I understood she was trying to get in without a reservation, but she had chosen the worst person to try this with. I told her, "I'm sorry, but we can't seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we don't have any seats available." I didn't want to go all out and say, "I'm the owner and we've never spoken before, so I never promised you anything," because I didn't want to embarrass her in front of the other girls. She then instructed one of the other girls to take a picture of me. She announced that she would speak with the owner and make sure that I was either scrubbing toilets or fired by the end of the week. The other girls behind her joined in, saying things like, "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye." I wasn't sure if they were in on it or if they truly believed she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then said, "Look, you can either give us a table or I can make your life very difficult. This is not worth losing your job." She kept pointing, trying to belittle me, saying things like, "Obviously you're not anyone here because if you were, you'd know who I am and never tell me anything other than yes or of course." She was constantly trying to put me down and take that table. At that point, it had been a hard day for me, and from my perspective, I had 3 options. I could tell her I'm the owner and call her out. I could give her the table and let it go. I could teach Queen Bee Karen and her minions a lesson. I chose option 3. I smiled and said, "Of course, ma'am, please follow me." I gave her one of the 3 tables we leave free in case a celebrity walks in, which happens occasionally. I told her, "I apologize for everything and you're right. It's easier just to give you the table. I also assured her that the first 3 rounds of drinks would be free. I seated them and personally served them. I told them, "We need one of your credit cards and IDs to keep on file, and we'll return them before you leave." Queen Karen handed me her card and told the baby Karens, "Tonight is on me." I took their orders, gave them their free drinks, and told them that because we were so busy, the meals might be delayed. The girls didn't care. All they wanted were the free drinks. They ordered 3 rounds before the food even arrived. They eventually called me over and asked me to check on the food, all while giving me the worst attitude since they walked in. I told them I'd look into it and asked if they wanted additional drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds. They were sloshed by the time the appetizers arrived, having done nothing but drink on empty stomachs all night and only eating salads. As more food arrived, more drinks were ordered. What these girls didn't realize was that they were at our VIP table, which normally costs a few $1,000s to sit at. But I didn't charge them for that, except not counting the first 3 rounds. I charged full price for all the extremely expensive cocktails they ordered. Furthermore, the table they were sitting at came with a VIP-only menu. Prices are not displayed on these menus, a restaurant industry secret. They also included high-end items like white truffle, black caviar dishes, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among others. At one point, I started questioning whether I was going too far. I wondered if these poor girls just didn't know any better. But then, one of the baby Karens asked me whether I thought my life was pointless because all I ever became was a server, and that pretty much erased any doubt. Also, one of the other staff told me that they were planning how to mess with me, believing that they could do so whenever they wanted and that I would always give them a table. I overheard them say, "He's cute, but I wouldn't date a waiter like that. He's such a pushover." There were other comments like that throughout the night, so I continued with their life lesson. By the end of the night, each girl had built up a bill ranging from $500 to $600. I handed Queen Karen the bill for $4,232.23, which included tax and tip. I've never seen somebody sober up so quickly. She went from smiling and giggling with her friends to almost in tears. She immediately summoned me over and asked whether this was a joke. I took the bill, looked it over, and apologized. "I'll get you the correct bill amount." She seemed completely relieved, assuming she had received someone else's bill, and called me an idiot before turning back to talk to her friends. When I returned with the corrected bill, she flipped out again. "It was only a question," I said. "Is there something wrong here that you didn't order?" She and the girls were stunned and went over every single line of the bill, including the initial several lines that listed their original 3 rounds as complimentary. They pulled out their phones and added everything up 100 times. Queen Bee, visibly startled, finally said, "1 second, I need to use the restroom." Part of me feared she'd dine and dash and leave the baby Karens with the tab, but I discreetly reminded her that we had her ID and credit card. Without making it too obvious, I was concerned that she would run out of money. 10 minutes later, she returned with fresh makeup, clearly having been crying, and told me how poor the food was, how dreadful the drinks were, and so undemanding that I at least cut the cost in half. She told the baby Karens that they would help pay, even though earlier she had claimed the entire night was on her. Then, as if a light bulb went off in her head, she brought up her alleged relationship with the owner again, as if that would motivate me to cut the bill in half. I smiled and told her, "No, simply no. I can't change the bill." She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages from someone named after my restaurant, followed by the word owner. I instantly understood what she had done in the bathroom. She had probably changed one of the other girls' contact names and deleted previous messages to create this fake script. I reviewed the messages and tapped the contact card before saying, "That's not the owner's cell number." Her response was, "He has multiple phones for business. Of course you don't know all of his numbers." I replied, "How about this? If we call him and he says it's okay to take 50% off the bill, then I'll do it." Her response was to begin ranting and screaming, which drew the attention of the few remaining patrons. I knew it was time to finish this. In a much firmer tone, I said, "Cut the crap, little girl. You do not know the owner, you've never been here before, and if you keep ranting, I'll call the cops." Her tone changed instantly as she tried to defend herself. I continued, My grandfather established this restaurant. My family has been running this establishment for decades. I've worked here nearly my entire life. I am the sole owner of this restaurant, and I've never seen you, heard of you, or made any promises to a stranger I've never met. Tonight, the little Karens froze, not knowing how to react. Queen Bee was in tears. I added, "Now I provided you the table you wanted. One of our specially reserved high-end tables, which I didn't charge you for, as well as 3 rounds of free drinks. If you do not pay your bill, I will call the cops and give them your ID." Karen signed the bill in tears, and the little Karens reached into their wallets to give her whatever cash they had, maybe a couple $100 promising to repay her more later. 2 days later, an angry man arrived at my restaurant and asked one of my bartenders to speak with me. I was in the back office working, so he had to wait about half an hour. She was with him too, keeping her head down. I took them both to my office and showed him highlights from the security cameras, which had particularly high-quality audio. Because it was in the VIP area, we needed to keep good records in that region due to previous unrelated incidents. I showed him most of it, their remarks, their orders, everything. When all was said and done, he stormed out with her, yelling at her the entire way. I haven't seen or heard from any of them since. But the initial bill I gave them, which didn't even include the $120 oysters, is framed on my desk. As a side note, I didn't lose as much money on the table and the 3 free rounds as you might think. The table was intended to be empty anyway, so I wasn't losing anything because I hadn't expected to gain anything from it. The cost of the food and other drinks more than compensated for the free rounds. So now that you know everything, am I the jerk? Probably the most astonishing thing about the Karens in this situation, aside from the money, their attempt to muscle their way into securing a seat and avoiding paying the bill, was their perspective on the world. That single statement about the OP's inadequacy as a waiter definitely stood out. It seems OP was going to loosen up on his entire revenge plan, but then one of the baby Karens asked him if he felt his life was meaningless because all he had become was a waiter. That has to be one of the most insanely entitled viewpoints we've ever seen on this channel. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having a job regardless of income. This happens frequently with jobs such as janitors, and I despise it when people think they are superior because they don't work in those positions. There is nothing wrong with being a janitor. I don't understand that mindset. But in this situation, she not only felt that way, she mocked him for doing a difficult job like being a waiter, or at least what she believed he was doing. One more thing. I'm glad this story ended on a somewhat gratifying note, with the father trying to reverse the situation, but ending up angrier with his daughter than with the restaurant owner. The only thing that freaked me out was that the restaurant recorded audio of the folks sitting at that table. I would probably avoid going to a restaurant if I knew my conversations were being recorded. Anyway, I'm glad it worked out for the OP. But tell me, how would you have handled this if it were your restaurant and these were your customers? Was the OP a jerk or not, and why? Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe for more stories like this.